to the meeting itself. So recording is started. We are letting folks in the meeting. Good afternoon, everybody. Please welcome this afternoon. We are admitting people into the meeting. We'll give it just a minute to make sure that we have everybody in the lobby has switched over. Sometimes that can take a minute or two. And just as an introduction, my name is Dominic Zerlo, and I'm the director for the Center for Medical Cannabis and Psilocybin here at New Mexico Department of Health. And Chris Peskuski is the chair of this committee. And just a couple of reminders, please remember that we do record these. So by joining in, you have agreed to being recorded. We do need to get individuals' full legal names as far as for comments. And we do include that within our minutes. And in addition to that, just please remember, because we are recording it, please be careful about language, because this is open. We post these on the website, and so they are open to anyone of all ages. So we just have to be careful. If there are names of particular species, products, or anything like that that do contain profanity, please just use the initials for the individual item, and otherwise just be just a little careful and cautious. For those who have asked about why we don't have everybody's face on and just have the few people from the department and the board who have cameras available, there are two reasons for that. One is because with the number of people that we have joining, if people are in areas where they do not have very good internet connectivity, it actually increases the likelihood that they get dropped from the call and have to rejoin. And since that does happen sometimes regardless, we want to try to minimize that as much as we possibly can so people can participate. And the other is because occasionally there are things in background behind people that, again, are not appropriate to be seen on the video. And so we want to ensure that we are able to include the video in full on the website. So with that in mind, I will turn it on over to Chris. Chris, thank you very much, and the meeting is yours.
Thank you, Dominic, and thank you all for being here. As is ritual now in this space, I'm going to start the meeting off with just 30 seconds of silence in an attempt to create a small container of compassion in a world full of chaos. So if you'll just drop in with me for just half a minute. Oh, that was abrupt today. All right. Welcome everybody to what is this, our fourth meeting now for the Propagation Committee? So glad to see familiar names in the chat and excited to get started today. We're just going to continue where we week, but first we need to start with introductions. Remember, if you do not introduce yourself, you are not eligible to vote. So please make your presence known. Let us hear your voice throughout this entire process. And also, when it does come time to voting, please abstain from voting if you're from out of state. Okay, with that said, please introduce yourselves. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and if you have any affiliations with anybody that has a stake in the game.
And if you'd like to introduce yourself, please just raise your hand on the computer. You utilize the hand icon near the top of the Teams window. If you're on a phone, click on the three dots, the ellipses in the menu, and then the hand icon will appear. And then if you're joining through voice only on the phone, press *5 to raise and lower your hand.
Fantastic. First, we have Don Moser. I have allowed your mic. Please unmute and begin when ready.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Don Moser. I live in Las Vegas, New Mexico. And having moved here 4 years ago after an advertising career in Houston, and I'm just I'm a beginner. I know very little about this, although I'm absolutely convinced that psilocybin is healthy. So I will be basically auditing, just listening, because this is all new to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Next, we have Hannah Rose. Hannah, I've allowed your mic. Please begin when ready.
Thank you. My name is Hannah Rose. I'm here in Silver City, New Mexico, and I'm really excited to get involved with this program. My intentions are to be a practitioner and a grower. I'm in school for my bachelor's in social work, and I would love to bridge social work and medical psilocybin.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Next, we have John Eslick. John, I have allowed your mic. Please begin when ready.
Hello, my name's John Eslick, or Jonathan Eslick. I'm a home mycologist. I've done some work with NM fungi and Four Corners fungi. I'm just here to assist as best I can.
Thank you very much for that. Next, we have Estevan. Estevan, I have enabled your mic. Please begin when ready. Seem to have a few issues there. If you want to check if your microphone is working, I'll give you a few more seconds. And if not, just lower your hand, and what we'll do is we'll continue going onwards. But if we can maybe figure that out, maybe join in via telephone. I believe the number is on. Is the number provided? Dominic, just a quick question.
It is in the invitation, yes.
In the invitation, all right.
But
So the number will be there. And just remember to unmute yourself. It's just *6. But just let me know if you're having any other issues. In the meantime, Mateo Frazier, pardon me, I don't know which way around. I've enabled your mic. Please begin when ready.
Sorry, it took a moment there. Hi, I'm Mateo Frazier. I'm a filmmaker and also a licensed, a vertically integrated cannabis cultivator in the state of New Mexico. Been studying the psychedelic space for a long time, and just here to collaborate, network, and learn about what we're doing in the state of New Mexico.
Thank you very much for that. Next, we have Asher Singer. Asher, I've enabled your mic. Please begin when ready.
Hi, yes, Usher Singer here. I'm based out of Chimaya, New Mexico, and I run a small scale fruit and vegetable farm. We also do commercial mushroom production, and yeah, I'm just curious to learn more about this program, and yeah, see if there's anything I can do to help or be involved in some way.
Thank you very much for that. Next, we have James Brown. James, I've enabled your mic. Please begin when ready.
Afternoon, everyone. And Chris, thank you again for chairing this. My name is James Brown. I'm a doctor of pharmacy here from New Mexico. I'm out of Albuquerque. I'm a veteran, so I'm representing that community. I'm also a facilitator trained in PAT, that's psilocybin assisted therapy out of Oregon. And so I'd be representing that space as a facilitator and practitioner. There's also one of the groups that's just new forming is a group called 5 Degrees North Healing Foundation, which is a nonprofit that will be focused on having a center to provide services for veterans, first responders, focused on trauma. Thank you again for allowing me in this space today.
Thank you very much for that. Next, we have Zoe Spiralatos. Zoe, I've enabled your mic. Please begin when ready. perhaps a few technical issues today. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, that's not a problem. If you just lower your hand, and what we'll do is we'll continue on. If you manage to fix it, or if that's not successful, there is a telephone number on the screen that's kindly been provided by both Jorge and Dominic. You can call in that way, and to unmute yourself, it's simply *6. So yeah, next we have Estevan. Hello again. Mic has been enabled, so please begin when ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Esteban Hernandez, lifelong New Mexico resident, owner of New Mexico Fungi, and president of the New Mexico Mycology Guild. I will be here in a little bit of a limited capacity till about 4 p.m., at which point I will be, fully into this meeting. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Next, we have Mikhail Frazier. I have enabled your mic. Please begin when ready.
Hi there, I'm Mikhail Frazier. I'm a filmmaker and owner of a production company here in northern New Mexico. I'm from northern New Mexico. I have a special interest in mycology and psilocybin research, so I'm just here to learn more about what's happening here in the state.
Thank you very much for sharing. Next, we have Gregory Evans. Gregory, I have enabled your mic. Please begin when ready.
Greetings, and thank you again for continuing this process, Chris, and your focus and alignment. I feel like we could have used a couple minutes of reflections this week. But yeah, thank you. My name is Gregory.
Okay.
My name is Gregory Evans. I'm an independent researcher and home mycologist with no affiliation. I'm a Santa Fe resident. My intention is to support the development of the program through committee recommendation process that is aligned with emerging research and best practices.
Thank you very much for sharing. We have a hand up there. I believe it might be Zoe. We'll find out. In any case, I have enabled your mic. To unmute, press *6.
Hello, everyone. I apologize for my computer never unmuted. And I'm so sorry. I can hear myself, so I'm trying to lower the volume here. Okay. My name is Zoe Spiralitos. I'm here from Buffalo, New York, and I'm here really just to kind of listen and learn. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner and a clinical assistant professor at UB School of Nursing, and this has been an area of interest of mine for research, and also my intention is to bring it into practice as well. So I'm very excited to be here, and I thank you all for allowing me to be here.
Thank you. We appreciate that. So next we have James B. James, I have enabled your mic. Please begin when ready.
Hey, this is James Blackford, and I have some experience in mycology enough to fall in love with it, and mushrooms in general. They're fascinating, amazing things. But mainly I wanted to say that I have personally experienced family members who have struggled with anxiety and depression and other mental kind of issues, who had been medicated for most of their adult life, who after turning to psilocybin treatment, a complete 180, better than any other man-made drugs before. So I'm very excited to see where this goes, and yeah, I'd just love to be a part of this. And I thank everybody for all their hard work and input on this. This is wonderful.
Thank you very much for that. And just to highlight some comments in the chat, Eric Barlow states, I'm Eric Barlow. I live in Las Cruces, no affiliations. Ben Edwards states, hi everybody, I'm Ben Edwards. I live in New Mexico for 50 years. I'm a soil mycologist working on land restoration and reforestation professionally. I'm also an amateur mycologist and have engaged in indigenous ceremonies for over 30 years. Thank you for that. Next we have Don Moser. Don Moser, Las Vegas, New Mexico, novice. And finally, John Eslick, I believe I forgot to mention that I'm located in Albuquerque. So thank you very much for your comments, everybody. And I turn it back to yourselves. Either Chris or Dominic, please go ahead.
Did we get Dan?
Oh, I don't believe we did. Actually, correction. My apologies for that. So Dan, my apologies. Go right ahead. I've enabled your mic. I really apologize for that. Dan Husson. Houston.
Hello, Daniel Houston, Rose City Laboratories, Portland, Oregon. I've been testing psilocybin for the legal industry for the last 3 years or so. and testing prior to that. Just here to let you guys know our experiences and trials and tribulations out here. I love it, and congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And finally, we got one more comment in the chat by James B. Also forgot to mention, I'm out of Clovis, New Mexico. So that is everyone. Back to you, Chris.
Brilliant. Thank you all for introducing yourselves and bringing your voice and yourselves to this meeting. I appreciate so much all of this input, and especially some of you joining from out of state in Oregon, coming to share lessons learned. Super shout out to you all, because this program is going to impact us in New Mexico, but you all are bringing outside knowledge and sharing it. And that's awesome. So we're going to continue on the propagation outline we've been working on for the last couple of weeks. We're going to kind of switch it up a little bit and start with batch definition, and then we'll go into the sunset clause language around 4 when Esteban can kind of engage fully, because he was awesome enough to provide that language for us. So if somebody can pull up the propagation.
Should be able to see it. Should be able to see it at this point.
I cannot. Can anybody else see it?
If other people can see it, can you do a thumbs up emoji? Okay, we have a lot of people who can. Okay.
Since this must be a technical glitch on my
well,
end.
Let me stop sharing and try again, just in case. Bear with us, please, everyone. Okay, can you see it now, Chris?
I cannot.
So Chris, at the top in the menu, do you see something that says view?
Yes.
Try different arrangements within there.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's just do.
Well, here, let me also do this. Is there anyone else using a thumbs up emoji at the moment who cannot see the document?
Should I leave and come back?
Why don't you go ahead, Chris? We can wait for a moment. While you do that, actually, I'll do introductions of our team. We skipped over that. So yeah, we'll see you in a moment. So good afternoon, everybody. As I mentioned in the very beginning of the meeting, my name is Dominic Zerlo, and I'm director for the New Mexico Department of Health Center for Medical Cannabis and Psilocybin. Jorge, would you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thank you for taking the time. My name is Jorge Gonzalez. I am the program manager for the medical psilocybin program.
And Adrian?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adrian Estrada. I am a health educator here with the program and excited to see how everything is evolving.
And Ishmael?
Hello, everybody. My name is Ismail Zutat. I'm one of the health educators too, and part of the health education team. Really excited to be here. So thank you.
And Robert? Oh, I can hear he's actually with somebody else at the moment. We also have Dr. Robert Truckner, who is our medical director for the center and for the program. So, and Chris, good timing. Are you able to see the document now? Oh, and you're on mute, Chris.
I can't, which is so interesting because I was able to see the PowerPoint. So
yeah, that's very odd.
Okay, well, let's work around it, and I think we can communicate by if you can help me kind of guide the outline.
I'll put the sections into the chat as well, like we did last time. So you'll have them there in the chat, and as well as everyone else. Okay, so I think we were talking about batches was going to be the first part. I'll put the whole thing on in. It includes some information from Colorado, which is just there for an informational uh, point. So what we currently just have here, and again, this is just as a placeholder, is a batch defined as a single harvest lot processed under uniform conditions, no regulated size requirement. And again, the comment here is what would be standard language to define this regarding harvesting and size of the lot. So suggestions.
Did you put it in the chat,
I'm
Dominic?
just doing it right now, Chris.
Okay, cool.
Takes me just a moment to to do both.
No, thank you. I just when I re-entered, there was nothing in there. I'm like, is that not working too? So
No, it just, yeah, sometimes it just shows from when you enter. So anybody who has suggestions, go ahead, raise your hand or comments regarding it.
So, and before we get into comments, I just want to say I put Colorado's testing or recommendations down below here at the bottom. And so I feel like it's a good starting point, but if people have a different starting point they want to offer, I'm welcome to that. And yeah, let's go ahead and start taking comments now.
Okay, first we have James B. James, your mic is enabled, so please begin when ready.
Thank you. Yeah, I know there's a lot more scientific minds who could give a little bit more of an opinion on this, but in section 2 there, where a batch shall be considered, all the mushrooms containing from a single inoculation in a flush, where a new flush would be considered a new harvest. Because the inoculation contains, you're introducing the same material in the substrate that you get from the first flush as you may get from a second or third flush. Essentially, it's all the same kind of thing. So I would vote to take out the language of flushes and just leave it for an inoculation and a substrate, and mushrooms harvested from that specific substrate would be considered a flush, just because there's really not going to be any differences. I want to say biologically, but I know that's probably not the right word, between the first, second, and third flush, because it's all from the original inoculation. So I think that would be better for costs for growers and testing and everything else. And there, I can't really see any negative reasons for doing it that way. I don't think the variance would really be anything noticeable or really make a difference.
And James, just as a question, so I did that as a revision at the moment and put that in the chat. Does that sound reasonable? Am I capturing what you're suggesting?
Yes, yeah, from the same substrate. Because there's only, definitely one flush, maybe two flushes, especially commercially and for the purposes. I can't see too much being harvested 3 or more flushes beyond, just because of the potential of a lot of different things. So yeah, yeah, that looks great.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Dan Hewson. Dan, your mic is enabled. Please begin when ready.
All right. So personally, I think that you guys can actually eliminate most all of this when you're trying to define a batch. Batches, because you guys are going down the homogeneous route and everything has to be homogenized, that pretty much, it doesn't, at that point, doesn't really concern whether it's the first flush, second flush, or what. There should be, if you guys want to put some regulation in there, maybe some a batch is what's harvested within a 7-day or 10-day period. Kind of stop it at that. And then and set a weight limit for a batch. And I'm only saying this because it's homogenized product. So it has to be homogenized. And when you just test homogenized product, you're taking a primary sample and a duplicate sample to make sure that the product is homogeneous. So if we're verifying it's homogeneous, do we need do you need all of this in here?
Thank you, Dan. That's a good question. And I think some of these were actually added prior to the discussion about homogenization. So what I did do is I took that first bullet and just said potency testing should be conducted for all batches of psilocybin, which have been homogenized using best practices for the testing of psilocybin and psilocin, which we actually have the other analysts that we had mentioned earlier will fix that language. But so you're thinking that with that, we take what is currently points 1 through 4, just delete those and put in potentially a time limit. So like, I think you had said 7 days. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, and I don't really do a lot of growing. I just know a lot of growers, but basically, you guys can talk about, yes, what's harvested. If you want to put stuff in there, what's harvested within a certain time frame. And, one batch is a kilogram or 2 kilograms or whatever you guys want to determine one batch size is. So a batch size is good. But I mean, I don't think you need to worry about whether it's first flush, second flush. I mean, what if they're growing and they can harvest everything on a first flush in multiples or whatever? I don't know, and then they're also growing second flushes in the same room at the same time. If you're homogenizing it, it needs to be uniform and for the homogenization. So whether it's first, second, or whatever, I think that doesn't matter.
Dan, can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
How often, I think when we talked, you mentioned that sometimes samples get sent back and need to be re-homogenized. How often does that happen?
Well, a manufacturer or grower, whatever you want to call them, they usually learn after the first or second time, and they usually don't do it again. So it's like it's usually just a one-off, and not very often. I really try to encourage people that, when you're a laboratory, if you're going to sample it, and if you're required to sample it as a laboratory and not allow the people to submit their own samples, then the lab should, stir it, or the manufacturer can stir it really good, stir it again, and then when we go to take a sample, we stir it again and then take a sample of it. It's just really hard with psilocybin because if the homogenized product, if it's a large quantity in a container, we've noticed that the top, quarter inch or whatever starts to oxidize compared to the bottom quarter inch of the container. So it will vary, and you just got to make sure that you constantly homogenize it.
Thank you. I think Hannah has a comment. Do you want to allow Hannah's mic, please?
Mic has already been enabled, Hannah, so please begin when ready.
Yeah, so just going off of the first person who commented, since you already got rid of the flushes, I'm just looking at number 4. Does that mean does that mean that y'all want to take out any new flushes from a single inoculation should be considered a new batch?
Thank you, Hannah. That was part of the question that I had is if we're going with homogenizing, does 1 through 4 just go away? And that was what Dan was suggesting. So yeah. So what are your thoughts? Do you think it just should go away, that 1 through 4? Or just 4?
I think that's a lot to go away. I like number 1. That's really clear and doesn't seem to be on that topic of flushing as the first 2 participants were speaking to. I liked the idea of defining the weight. I believe the last person spoke to something about creating a weight definition in a batch. That seems more simplified than everything in number 3. And then what I was wondering, since you already got rid of that whole sentence about flushes is keeping number 4 in contradiction with that because of what he spoke to with the homogenization.
Yeah, I think if we get rid of the flushing language, that'll be taken out of the whole thing. And again, just for context, I took Colorado's recommendation in its entirety. So when we kind of update this in our outline, potency testing and testing, I think comes a little later in the outline. We'll talk more about that, but that'll certainly be in there. But if let's go to James. Do you have a comment, James?
Yes. Am I unmuted here?
Yes, you're
Yes,
unmuted.
yes,
Yes,
you
we
are.
can.
Okay, thank you. So just to give analogies as far as for folks who haven't grown them before, imagine like growing tomatoes. Say you had a time limit whenever you harvested. Some may be just right, some may not be quite ripe enough. So you may harvest some that are ripe and ready to go, and then a few days later, a week later, these are ready to go. All coming from the same kind of soil. So again, with having the batch defined as what everything that is produced from the substrate, like I had commented before, and like you've heard a lot, there people who grow mushrooms are very careful with everything because it's so easy for just natural mold and things in the air to contaminate it. So they will naturally follow these processes where they won't use the substrate for too long for the potential of a trike and things like that to happen. And also different strains do develop kind of at different times. The flushes are a lot different. But on average, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks at the very most, and then that substrate is done. Testing has already showed that you could have two mushrooms from the same harvest from the same substrate who have some pretty drastically different intensities of psilocybin and things like that. So having it where you can basically do the whole harvest from the substrate, homogenize everything together, that's also going to make kind of dosage and strength a lot more accurate that way. Because if you have some you produce that are higher, some that are lower, having that average over the whole harvest of one substrate would really make things a lot closer, as far as what growers produce and things like that. So that was all.
All right, so it sounds like we have most people saying we should strike the flushing language or the flush language from the batching definition. Is there anybody in dissent to that opinion that wants to comment right now? Okay, I think we can go ahead with consensus on removing all the language around, dividing the batches by flushes. Next up, I think let's go to our weight. Is a kilogram a good weight limit for a batch?
Okay, I'm not hearing, oh, there we go. We
We have a hand up. Yeah.
hand,
Hannah, your mic is
go
enabled.
away.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. So what I'm curious about here, and what I'm recalling from one of the previous meetings that I attended, which was a board meeting, what stood out to me in that meeting was someone on the board mentioned this idea of making standards looser in the beginning because it's easier to add standards than to reverse a lot of strict standards. And so I don't really have like an opinion around the weight of a kilogram, but I guess I just wanted to speak to my agreement and like promotion of just creating really simple standards for us growers initially. Because that it just really resonated when she said that. So that was it. Thank you.
I think we're trying to make things simple as possible, but also I got to recognize that there's a balance point between also, this has to be regulated to some extent since it is in a medical psilocybin context. So we're trying to keep things as open as we can. We've struck a lot of language out of a proposal so far, but let's go to James, see what you have to say, sir.
So I guess my first question and then a comment and then I can mute. So my question would be, what is this weight kind of limit requirement trying to accomplish or trying to avoid happening? I'm kind of curious about that. And then the other comment I'll say is if it's 1 kilogram after it's dried, I believe if I Googled it correctly, that's about 35 ounces. That would be an extremely large harvest from a batch. So that number I don't, because I want to say mushrooms are like 90% water or something or thereabouts. So whenever it's dried, so that would be a very, very almost like commercial scale type of harvest if I'm doing my math right. But I am kind of curious again, what's that trying to accomplish or avoid or whatever.
Okay, so
Excellent. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
a couple things on that. The kilogram is just what Colorado used, and so that was kind of our starting point. I'm skeptical that you can adequately homogenize a batch larger than that. I don't even know if, a kilogram, like if you were to take several samples, how close it would be. Maybe Dan can answer that question. But I think we also need to balance, like, how do we not weed out small time growers? If you have a smaller grower who's only producing a half a pound and that's their batch size, and a larger one that's producing, 5 or 10 pounds in an inoculation, then the test, if we allowed no batch size limit, then the commercial scaled grower would have a massive advantage there. And also the testing labs, need to be able to make enough profit on this to stay open. And we need both labs and growers around throughout the state to keep this thing affordable, I think. And so we add a little bit of cost to maybe a little extra testing on smaller batch sizes, but that allows us to have growers and testers closer to the places where people need it. It's kind of my thought process right now. But Dan, can you go ahead and speak your mind here?
Yes. Just like in the cannabis industry, there are batch sizes, and it really comes down to, some of these numbers are arbitrary. People just picked them, and I think we're at 1 kilogram here in Oregon, if I'm not mistaken, and Colorado followed Oregon, and you guys are following Colorado. So it's kind of the deal. Now, as a laboratory, scientifically speaking, it is definitely better to do smaller batches. It's just easier to manage, handle, and mix and stir and do whatever you need to do for packaging. I mean, think realistically, how long is it going to take to package this up, especially if you guys are doing microdose packaging? It could take multiple people several days or a week to package. So it's what's really scientifically, I don't know, what's manageable there. Now, as a lab, we have to pull 5% of a batch. So we end up taking that much material to be a representative sampling of the batch. But yes, it also comes down to finances, and it really helps the lab if there is some limit. And the larger the limit, it's not really, in my opinion, helping anybody. I don't know. Anything else? Any other question? Did I answer it?
I think you answered it. Did you have another comment on that, or did we kind of cover that?
No, that's all. It should be something. I worry about it getting too large. You should define some weight, but I don't know. A kilogram seems like it's fine. It could be too much. I don't know. I'll let you guys decide.
Yeah, I think, somebody brought up the 35 ounces. It seems like a lot. So who would be in favor of shrinking that down to maybe a half a kilo? And let's go ahead and take these comments first, but kind of keep that in the back of your mind, and we'll kind of discuss that after these comments. So
Zach
Zach,
Snyder,
go ahead.
I've enabled your mic. You may go ahead.
Thanks, Chris. Chris, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you as far as the ecosystem as it involves testing small growers and potential commercial growers. I think we should leave it at 1 kilogram. And I think you're going to probably further define this as we get a little bit further on to talk about testing, so that we're talking about what test is going to be required per batch. So if we're talking about 1 kilogram is going to be equalized into requiring 1 test, and like the previous gentleman was saying, that that test is going to require a set aside of 5% of that initial batch. I think that is probably adequate enough to make it to where 1 kilogram is the maximum amount. So it doesn't necessarily affect the smaller growers any less. It's just that it's going to be an arbitrary number that we're just going to have to pick. And if it's worked for Oregon and for Colorado, it doesn't sound like it's that important in the grand scheme of things, other than making sure that it's associated with the actual test associated with the batch.
So I see one inconsistency in here. This is saying that this Colorado language is saying they send 2.5 grams in per kilo, which would not be anywhere close to 5%, right? That would be more like 1%, or a little more than 1%.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that 5% is the correct answer. I think if we were looking at smaller samples, it probably would be more beneficial as far as the handling of the product, especially once it gets into the testing. So, because there's a whole chain of custody process that we still have to go through there. And I think the smaller the sample would be the better, easier way to track chain of custody.
Okay. Did we have another comment, or did somebody put their hand down there?
I believe James B. They had their hand up.
Go ahead, James.
Oh, goodness, sorry about that. I thought I put it down. I was just typing it in chat. Just some rough math, basically 1 kilogram of dried mushrooms would be about 175 pounds harvested, because of the amount of weight the mushrooms lose. They're 80 to 90% water. So I think that number is great. No non-commercial grower is going to come close to getting to that amount with so that's totally fine. The 2.5 grams, I was kind of seeing that as you were mentioning that. I think it would be great, 1 test per batch, as long as it's under the 1 kg. Then I think that would be totally adequate.
Let's go to James Brown.
Thanks, Chris. I'm in support of, if you need to lower it, maybe go to 2 grams for the total. I like the 1 gram idea of just limiting it there for safety at this point. Would it be harder for us to increase that? That's why I just want to make sure that we're not putting that cap on it. And then later on would have to go back and say, no, we need that a little bit more. So I just want to make sure, I like the 1 gram idea, like you're saying. I just want to make sure we don't cap that off too early. Is it should be 1.5. I just want to make sure we do that right. Also, and I just want to make sure we're all assuming over that 7-day period, right? This is over dry. This is going to be dried, because if you get it on the 7th day, it's still very fresh. Weight's going to be different. It still needs time to dry. So I want to make sure that it's the dried, homogenized. Do we need anything with that? And we're, like somebody said in the chat earlier about dried versus wet. But if you harvest over 7 days, you will have a variant. That's all. Thank you.
So just to clarify for everybody, as we had already determined that it would be dried, and the 7-day period is as far as harvest. So what would be done, but that does bring up the question about the 7-day period that was recommended, or that was a comment made earlier, but I don't think that has been necessarily adopted or anything. It's just there for the conversation. But if I may, we have a lot of people actually just kind of agreeing with the 1 kilogram. Is there anyone who actually would have an issue with the 1 kilogram? Okay. And so, can we hear some of the reasons for the issue and the concern?
Let's go to Hannah.
Yes. Yes. So my reasoning on that is I'm hearing these numbers, this weight, 175 pounds of mushrooms. I just did a journey with the tiniest amount. And like, I'm just thinking like, that's so much. And I really, really value small scale growing and like small scale organic farming. And so I'm always going to be in support of the smaller growers. And that's why I raised my hand.
I think that weight was wet weight, so that would be before they're dried. But let's go to Asher, please.
Yeah, sorry, this is Asher here. I guess I'm just kind of curious as to the purpose of like the sizing of this batching and having limitations. Like, I mean, I can understand maybe like a maximum batch size, but like, what is the reasoning to limit a smaller batch size? It just seems like it might exclude some smaller growers. I'm just curious.
So Asher, this is the maximum. It batches can be smaller. It's just batches up to 1 kilogram. So if someone only had one that had a batch that was just a quarter of a kilogram, that would still be perfectly fine. We're just trying to define that upper limit.
Okay, understood. That wasn't clear to me. That totally makes sense. Yeah, in that case, that seems like a reasonable size unless someone wants it larger. But if they're submitting a certain percentage of the batch for testing, it shouldn't really matter too much either way, unless there's another reason to limit that upper size. I'm not sure.
So that's I'm trying to protect our smaller growers, Asher, by limiting that batch size potentially. Eric, would you? Oh, I'm sorry, Asher. Did you have a question or another comment?
No, that's all. Thank you.
And Chris, just to clarify something, that 0.2, so 2.5 grams would equate to 0.25%, just for a kilogram.
Yeah, maybe we can get Jan back in here to.
I would recommend we hold off on what the sample size is going to be, because there is an entire section on that with regard to testing itself. So I would say at this point, if we could just determine on the batches, we've actually already spent over half an hour just on this item. So, and we do have a lot to cover over these next few weeks. So,
okay, let's hear from Eric real quick, and then I'll kind of push this along, I think.
Yep. Eric, nothing? Okay.
Okay, Eric has dropped off. All right, so let's see. All in favor of, oh, there's Eric. Do you still want to talk, Eric?
Don't know what's happening there. Their hand seems to be going up and down consistently. I have enabled your mic, so if you want to attempt to say something, that's okay. We have Ben there with something to say. Ben, I've enabled your mic.
Oh, me? I
Just
different
quickly,
name?
I think we should take the time limit off the 7-day period. I think that'll actually support smaller growers and being able to do 2 or 3 flushes and still have a batch and be under that 1 kilogram. That's my feedback.
Thank you, Ben. Right now, we're really just talking about the size at the moment. The waiting period, I think there's other people who have comments, but if we could get a determination as far as the size, I think that would help.
Let's go ahead, and if you are wanting to lower the size from 1 kilogram, please raise your hand. I'm only seeing one person, so I'm gonna say that we have a consensus to keep the weight at 1 kilogram for a batch. And just to confirm, I did only see one hand raised there, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so we'll keep it at 1 kilogram. For the next part, I guess we could go on to time with that. I feel like there was already kind of consensus through this process that there's no reason to limit it to 7 days because we're homogenizing it anyway, so multiple flushes is not an issue. Does anybody have dissent to that opinion? Okay. Seeing no hands, I'm gonna assume that we should remove the language around the 7 days too. Should we put a limit on the time limit between when something can be? And I kind of think we need to define it at some point because we will probably need to be able to retest at a certain point after it's tested the first time. So would 3 weeks be a reasonable timeline limit to catch a batch? Any comments on that?
We're seeing 2 comments in the chat, one by Adrian, one by James, both arguing. We got 3 now, all arguing 4 weeks.
4 weeks?
Yes.
Okay.
We have a comment here as well from Gregory Evans saying that there is a massive variance in flush cadence. Oh my gosh. And then Dan Hewson, there needs to be a time limit, he stipulates. And James, you have your hand up, so please begin when ready.
Yeah, just I think 4 weeks is good. Like some of the others have stated, the different species, harvest flush in different amount of time, some quicker, some slower. And then there's also variance on, humidity and temperature, and there's just so many factors. But yeah, I think I agree with everybody that 4 weeks would pretty much cover all the bases for all the different strains that'd be grown.
Okay. Is there anybody in dissent to putting a 4-week timeline on it? All right, I'm going to go ahead and say that we have consensus around sorry, John, do you have something to say? Go ahead.
I was under the assumption that we were going to be doing all Psilocybes. And if we are, some of them take longer to fruit for a second flush. So if we limit that, then you wouldn't be able to get a second flush.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm feeling like more than 4 weeks might be a little long. Yeah, if we go 4 months, some of the Colorado and Oregon, I think, are retesting it 6 and 9 months. And I think Dan did a paper on this. How often are you seeing the batches get retested, Dan? Yeah, Dan, the same 4 weeks. It seems too long.
4 weeks seems a little long for a batch, but it's you guys to decide. We've seen potency change over time, but the total equivalent psilocybin has not changed. So that really needs to be taken into consideration. And when you guys do have retests done, maybe think about and I'm worried about some of the things I say, but think about if they're not happy with the test lab or test results and another laboratory is issuing higher results, you would encourage lab shopping by allowing them to retest a batch at any lab they wanted to. So maybe think about making, stick to the whatever lab for that batch for retesting and stuff like that. But here in Oregon, we're not really allowed to retest product.
Okay, I misspoke on that. Sorry.
Colorado does, if I'm not mistaken. And the only reason Oregon doesn't is because they don't want to encourage lab shopping, but I tried to fight Oregon on that. I think it should be retested.
Yeah, I think it should be retested too, especially in the medical context. And I think 4 months seems a little long. Let's go. Let's start with a month. Who is in favor or who is opposed to a month? Please raise your hand.
At present, there are no hands raised.
There are no hands raised. Okay. All right. So we have consensus then. If you don't speak up, then things are not going to roll the way you want them to. I encourage everybody to please, speak in opposition if you disagree. But I think a month is a reasonable time to collect a batch, and we'll probably have some sort of retest at 9 months when we get to that point. But does that answer all of our questions surrounding a batch? Is there anything else that we need to define or put in there as to kind of lock that down?
I think that's good as far as the batch portion. And I know the next set goes into testing, but we do have to talk about the sunset clause and go forward. And Eric, we are actually reading the chats and have been making some comments regarding those and listening to them. We're just not reading them aloud because the conversation has pretty much mimicked what has been in the chat, just with other areas. And we want to make sure that we are getting things moving forward as much as we can. So just with regard to that. But if Esteban is fully able to be in the meeting, I would suggest we go to the sunset clause next.
Sounds good to me.
Esteban, are you able to be here to speak?
Yes, I am, Dominic. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I will switch documents. Give me just a moment and I'll pull yours up, Esteban.
All right.
But if you'd like to start speaking on it while I find which of my 6,000 windows I have open is actually the sunset clause.
Certainly, yeah. So As a reminder, or perhaps new information to folks just joining us for the first time, we've been discussing a sunset clause across a variety of different committees regarding the Psilocybin Advisory Board, with the idea of providing both equity and access to New Mexico residents and also complying with constitutional law. This whole concept of a sunset clause in regard to a psilocybin program is not new. It's something that's previously been practiced in various medical cannabis scenes across the country, and most recently in the Oregon psilocybin program. The sunset clause, as noted at the top here, is a statute or regulation or other law that essentially puts an end date on any given measure here. So the idea is for the first few years of program inception, this program can only accept licenses from New Mexico residents. The big reason for this precedent is to stop multi-state organizations and larger venture capital from coming in and monopolizing, what is intended to be a program to truly support New Mexico residents. If we scroll down just a little bit here, the precedent, we do have the exact wording from the Oregon Psilocybin Services statute on there. They note essentially, very similar to language to what I've created below, in that the first 2 years of program participation are limited to either individuals or businesses owned by a majority or with a majority ownership of a resident by at least 50% for the first 2 years of program inception. So again, this just goes to show there is absolutely precedent for applying a clause such as this. We wouldn't necessarily be breaking any new ground, but I think it does really serve to protect those with a true interest here within the state of New Mexico. So if you want to scroll down to the proposed measure, this is sort of my initial draft here. And I will say, I think we're all very open to discourse on changing any of the specific metrics in here, whether that's time frames or limitations on ownership percentage. So by all means, please feel free to comment or raise your hand to apply any sort of notes you may have on this. So the applicability of this measure, it applies to all applicants and holders of licenses under the New Mexico Department of Health Medical Psilocybin Program. I put a cursory list up here. This will definitely need to be updated to whatever the final license categories are. As I saw it, it was manufacturers, testing facilities, and facilitators. Dominic, are there any other licenses beyond these 3 categories that y'all are looking at?
Not at this current time.
Okay, wonderful. So that seems to be good news.
I'm sorry, actually, Esteban, let me take that back. There is the possibility when we get into the idea of transportation. But again, as you mentioned, we can update it if there are other permits and licenses that are issued.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you. So being a quote unquote sunset clause, there is a temporary requirement in place here. So notwithstanding any other provisions of law, until January 1st, 2029, any applicant for a license subject to this measure must demonstrate compliance with residency and ownership requirements set forth here. The individual applicant, so for example, an individual therapy practitioner who is working at a facilitator location, if they are an individual, they must provide proof that they have been a resident of the state of New Mexico for a minimum of 24 months immediately preceding the date of the application. So that's just 2 full years of residency leading up to the application date. For entities, which would be the larger majority of applicants for licenses, this would include corporations, LLCs, partnerships, associations, trusts, all of our legal umbrella of commercial entities. For ownership requirements, we're looking at more than 51% ownership. Ownership interest, that is, in the applicant must be held by individuals who have been a resident of the state of New Mexico. Same sort of time frame here, minimum of 24 months immediately preceding the date of application. Similarly, control requirements. This is sort of designed to prevent what we may consider a shell corporation, right? Like someone has a cousin that lives here and they use their name to apply for a license. The individual described in subsection A must possess actual authority to direct management, policy, and operations of the applicant. That would be the business itself, whether through voting rights, management authority, contractual rights, or other indicia of control, as determined by the Department of Health. I do know the Department of Health has your own legal team available there, so I wanted to leave this language a little bit more open and subject to the Department of Health scrutiny. Going down to our next clause here, anti-circumvention, essentially honoring the spirit of this measure here. So the New Mexico Department of Health may deny any application, refuse renewal, or take disciplinary action if determined that an ownership, management, financial, or contractual agreement has been established for the purpose of evading or circumventing the requirements of this measure. Again, just ensuring that we're honoring the spirit of this, and we don't allow any technicalities to slip through that I may have missed in, you know, the measures and individual sections listed above. And finally, measure duration. The measure would be set to expire January 1st, 2029. On or after this date, there will be no ownership, residency, or local participation requirements unless expressly authorized by the Department of Health. Again, if we find that New Mexico-based businesses are meeting all of the needs of not only production side, but also serving the end users or the patients in this case, I really don't see any need to actually permanently end it. So there is an option for theoretical renewal, whether that's a temporary renewal period or an indefinite renewal period. The language here is intended to be very open because it's hard for all of us to predict where our program is going to be in about 2 years. So again, all of these dates, all of these timeframes, I am extremely open to any thoughts, criticisms, ideas from any of y'all here, particularly New Mexico residents, as unless you are a New Mexico resident, you do not currently have a voting right in this meeting.
Just so you know, we have a hand up there by James Brown. Go
ahead, James.
If you want to go ahead.
I just wanted to say I'm in support of something like this. My only suggestion would be is there a way to make it 36 months? The reason why
absolutely, yeah,
is because we're in rural communities, you know, and those it's gonna be really slow. And I'm just afraid those people won't have the opportunity to own their businesses long enough in those rural communities to really get a foot going. With the other businesses I've done in pharmacy land, it takes 2 to 3 years in general just for us to get there. So I can just imagine, you know, going through the city council, you know, doing everything else you have to do just to get this thing going. There's going to be some precedent setting, and I would just that would be my thing. Would be open it to 36 for us, and then, you know, like with that option clause, I like it.
So to be honest, I think finding the ceiling here is going to be something that's open for discussion. I mean, to be perfectly honest, my preference would be to close this program to New Mexico residents permanently, but I think a sunset clause has to be sort of our jumping off point to establish precedent. So does anybody else have a higher ceiling than 36 months? Let's see. Okay, so no hands or comments currently. So yeah, I think 36 months is absolutely reasonable. And you are correct, especially in a rural setting, you know, where not only do you have less access to, you know, the resources to develop your licensed business, but also probably face more scrutiny from local lawmakers or regulations of your city, county, or municipality. I would say 36 months seems extremely fair, which would place that at July 1st, 2029.
Is there any opposition to a 36-month sunset or expanding this to 36 months for a sunset clause? Okay, I think we can do that by consensus. Is there any critiques, criticisms about any of the language in this measure? All right, I think this is kind of an important one, so I would like to ask for a vote on it. So all in favor of for this measure, please raise your hands.
Okay, and we are at 15 and counting. So that's already more than half the people who are here. So
Okay, please lower your hands, everyone. And then, as always, I want to give room for dissent. Does anybody dissent to this proposal?
Hold on just a minute, Chris. We still have people with their hands up. And go ahead, Chris.
All right. Does anybody dissent to this proposal? Please raise your hand. All right, seeing none, I'm going to accept this sunset clause as proposed by Esteban as a proposal to make to the advisory board. Thank you so much, Esteban, for your work putting that together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris, as well as the whole Department of Health team and everyone involved in this meeting. It seems like we're all really in agreement on protecting this program as a benefit for all New Mexico residents.
Excellent. And Dominic, what do you think the best, should we have this as a separate document that we just take to the advisory board, or are we going to put this language into our outline? How do you feel like we should do that?
Yeah, I don't think we need to do the entire document, but we will include the document as supporting information and, supporting evidence essentially. But what we'll do from the program standpoint is we'll distill it into a couple of one lines, because what we really just need for the board is, is the sunset clause with that expiration date to ensure that it's New Mexico residents and of like the 51%. So we can reduce it down into that language. The thing to remember is regulations end up being really long to begin with. And so we have to try to minimize the language. And we are working with one of our Department of Health attorneys to take the information and turn it from the outline and the information that is being agreed upon here to turn that, by the time we get to regulatory stand, to turn it into that regulation language. So a lot of what we're doing now is we're really making the consensus and the votes about the ideas, and then the language itself will get finalized to make sure that it's in the correct legal form. Because believe it or not, a comma or a that or some other things makes a huge difference in it, and we want to make sure that we are doing this in the right way. So that's why we don't need to worry so much about the specifics here. We just bring it to, quite frankly, to the attorneys. And there are some attorneys that are here on this meeting, and once we do have that language, it will be shared, and there's a whole set of public meetings that actually happen just around that language on rules and regulations. So that will happen after the board has made their recommendations. Just to sort of clarify that for people who are not familiar with the process.
Thank you, Dominic. I think Hannah, I apologize if I'm saying your name wrong. Please go ahead and make your comment and correct me if I'm saying your name.
It's Hana. Yeah, it's Hana with a soft A. Thanks for asking. So I thought we were just focusing on that whole vote, just that decision around that extension on the timeline, that 36-month timeline. So I had two things. Actually, I just want to speak to one of them. On the New Mexico resident requirement, which says 2 years on there right now. I've been a New Mexico resident for many, many years, since, gosh, like over 20 years. And I witnessed during COVID a ton of influx of people from California. And so I love the spirit of long-term New Mexico residents. And I would like to suggest that we extend the date to be before COVID, because there was a big impact on our community, like for unaffordable housing, and just like there was a big negative impact that I'm really witnessing here because of the influx of people from California. And I'm sorry that I'm so emotional about it, but I really care about affordable housing, and that really went down when we had people from California come in. And I just don't know if they have that same New Mexico spirit. And so I just wanted to name that. Thank you.
All right, Hannah, I appreciate your comment, and but unfortunately, we've already voted on it, and I have to honor the spirit of that democratic process. So please don't hold your comments back prior to. If I'm not being clear on what we're voting for, I'll work on that in the future. But yes, I think we need to move on to the next section. Dominic, can you?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up now, Chris.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. It just takes a moment. Okay, and should have the document open now. Can people see it? Chris, can you see it at this point? I'm hoping you can.
I
No.
still can't.
Okay.
I don't know what's
Other
going
people? Okay, other people are able to see it. So I don't know what's happening there, Chris. Okay, so the next set, we actually had already spoken previously about the homogenization, was going to be with regard to testing authority, and that the testing, let me actually just put this little bit on in the chat. Sorry, everybody, and it takes me a moment. Okay, and what we have is that the testing would be performed by department-approved laboratories, and then requirements for laboratories to be approved. Some of the recommendations that have already come in through public comments and through other areas, and again, we're including these in, not necessarily because it's coming from the department, but because these are items that have been recommended by various people, is to utilize the existing cannabis testing laboratories. They would have to submit their SOPs and their IDCs, which Dan could probably explain better than I can what an IDC actually is, but it essentially is that they have verified their ability to perform that test. So that's their processes for extracting the samples. Some other recommendations have been to utilize the ISO and the IEC 17025 accredited labs. And then other labs that are either approved or overseen by the department. That last one actually is one as far as for the department, because that includes the state laboratory, for example, which actually has that accreditation. And so that was why that was there. Another one that has come in that since this was originally written was actually that not necessarily existing cannabis testing laboratories, but laboratories that meet the same standards as are currently in the cannabis regulations as far as for them to become permitted. So if it was a laboratory that did not want to be a cannabis testing lab, but they met all those other qualifications otherwise, as far as their certifications, processes for cleaning the lab, all of that sort of thing, that then they could have a process to be approved as well without going through the cannabis testing process or the cannabis permitting process.
Excellent. I got a quick question for you, Dominic. Are all the marijuana or cannabis labs currently ISO certified? Is that how you guys run it?
No, they are not. They have a whole set of regulations that they have to meet.
Okay, so we don't have, well, that opens up. Dan, can I call on you to talk about certifications and what we might want to require for our labs?
Sure. I personally believe that if you're testing for psilocybin and or even cannabis, you should be required to have an accreditation from a third-party accreditation company, such as the ISO 17025 and or NELAC, NLEC or NELAC/TNI, because that third party accreditors, they oversee the laboratories, and if there's nobody overseeing laboratories, there has been a history of laboratories maybe cutting corners and doing things they're not supposed to be. Plus, if this is a medicine, especially a psychedelic medicine, and somebody is wanting to do microdosing or less dose and have a subperceptual dose, I would hope that that laboratory could do good and accurate testing. We've already done some round robins, which mean with other psilocybin testing labs across the United States. And we have some good data on that I think I've shared with New Mexico already, but maybe if I haven't, just let me know, I'll share it. And then how labs are not all equal. And, we had one lab that was testing at 3 or 4 times the potency of the other laboratories. So somebody would have been not getting an adequate amount of dosage if they were using this laboratory. So I don't know. I believe it's necessary. You have it in pharmaceutical. You hopefully have it for environmental and water quality and all of that stuff. So it should follow suit, in my opinion. The NELAC and T&I standards are a little bit more stringent, and they focus on the raw data and making sure that the data coming off of the instruments is good, valid, and acceptable versus and this is a general statement, and versus the ISO 17025 is more of is your paperwork in order, and not as much with is the equipment running correctly, and are you able to see the stuff in the equipment or in the run. So it's a little different of a certification accreditation, but it still is something better than nothing. And labs have a history of not doing the right thing if they're not accredited.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate your perspective on that. And let's go to Shane.
Yeah, this question is for Dan. Is there a requirement for calibration of the tools in the accreditation process? I mean, is it once a year? Or is it just at your own, whim? I mean, I've seen in the past labs that don't have any requirements on calibrations, and then the tools get out of cal, and they're providing bad information, and there's nothing there to regulate that they get them calibrated at any specific rate, and therefore the whole thing is pretty much invalid.
Well, to speak on that, basically, that's where Oregon, we went with the TNI NELAC, which is environmental, water quality, and all of that. And the only reason we did that was because us labs in the beginning of the cannabis industry all band together, and we were helping writing the laws, and we thought that Oregon, since the Oregon Health Authority is a accrediting body for NELAC TNI, that they would be willing to work with us more. So we went down that road. The rest of the states went with ISO. What I feel like is happening with the ISO is it's not as stringent on the equipment and the calibrations and all of that as the other accreditation. And yes, I've seen labs not calibrate or do what they need to, but if you validate and do everything you're supposed to be doing and passing your proficiency testing as a laboratory, then you're good to go. The problem here in psilocybin is there's really not much to deal with in proficiency testing. So no labs, including mine, have really participated in a proficiency testing program, which means it's been written in the law that we're not really required to unless a system comes in place. But that's where I've taken the liberty and contacted every psilocybin lab I've known across the states, and we've all created a round robin, and we all want to do the right thing and produce adequate and not tarnish this industry, because this industry is valid and important to me. I don't know. I probably got on a tangent. Sorry.
So then maybe we add into the documentation, even if it's even if we go with ISO or NELAC, that there is a once a year requirement for recal to make sure that the tool is measuring properly. Because like you just said earlier, there was one lab, I think it was you that said that there was evidently their tool was out of calibration, and they were producing different results than anybody else. We can't have that, right? Or we don't. That's not a good situation.
it's definitely not a good situation. And the problem here in psilocybin, what we found in Oregon and Colorado, and you guys will soon find out, the volumes are not there. So you're not going to have a lot of laboratories. You're going to be lucky if you have one laboratory wanting to do it, or more than one. The other issue is Colorado has some amazing psilocybin laboratories. I know them personally, we've hung out, we've talked at events, and they were all ready to get licensed, but Colorado wrote into the law that they could no longer test for anybody that was not licensed. So I know very good quality laboratories that said, no, thank you. And then this laboratory that is doing the testing now, I don't really know anything about them really, which is kind of weird. And they're the one and only laboratory in Colorado. So, and I'm the one and only laboratory in Oregon. So definitely, and whether it's proficiency testing, and here in Oregon, we have to do proficiency testing twice a year. And I think Colorado is once a year. Most states are once a year. So once or twice a year, definitely participate in some sort of PT, proficiency test. There is one out there, but it's button mushrooms and they spike it with psilocybin and psilocin, and you read it off of that, which I guess is close. It's better than nothing. Yeah. So definitely that, and make sure, I mean, you should be calibrating if you're a good quality laboratory. You want to calibrate regularly because you should be noticing drop-offs with the equipment over time because of the columns get plugged and clogged or dirty.
Thank you, Dan. So I have got a couple thoughts on this. I think we should go switch from the ISO to the NELAC accreditation, being that that's more scientifically supported, as Dan said, and it's less focused on the paperwork and more on the instrumentation being validated. And correct me if I'm saying anything incorrectly, Dan.
I would just caution, I would caution that I would do a little investigation with New Mexico and are there TNI NELAC accredited labs there and how can you or whatever. But I also want to caution, just because if you're only going to end up with one lab and they're a cannabis lab, well, did you say your cannabis labs are not accredited under ISO?
They are not necessarily under ISO. It's not a requirement. They do have to go through their own process, and it does include submitting the IBCs and the SOPs.
Oh, okay.
And
so
they do have to do proficiency testing. I'm not sure if it's annually currently or more often, but it is at a minimum annually.
Okay, well, I encourage an accreditation. I just encourage it, just because it's a third body that comes in and audits every year and or every other year, and actually makes people dig through their paperwork, and they walk through the laboratory and they make sure that people don't have unlabeled bottles and blah blah blah, and don't have sticky notes and this or that everywhere. So I don't know. I just believe, that's my belief. Something, yes.
And Dan, just to be clear, that is actually part of what does happen with the cannabis testing labs, is they do get that inspection that is done through the regulation. Well, it used to be done through Department of Health, through this program, and in conjunction with the state lab, and is now done through the Cannabis Control Division.
Okay, that's good. Well, something's happening, so that's good.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, keep going about the accreditation. Go for it.
And Dan, I just had a quick question. I want to make sure that I've got the correct initials. It's NVLAP, correct? Is what you're discussing?
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and did I post the right link above that, Dan? Is that correct? To their webpage?
the link. What are you talking about?
Oh, I
Is it
see it
not
in
in
the chat, Chris.
There's a chat to the NELAC Institute.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that looks like yep, that's it.
Okay, I was hoping so, because that's where I've been kind of reading from. So that would be my recommendation, is that we ensure accreditation given the nature of this process. Dan has been doing this for a while, so I think that might be prudent. Are there any comments against or in support of something else? Do you have a thought process on this, Dominic?
The only thing that I would say as far as with existing cannabis testing laboratories is it actually speaks to Dan's point as far as how difficult it can be for a laboratory to start up and to be able to sustain, especially as a program is just starting. And one of the things is these laboratories, as we were mentioning, they do already, while it may not necessarily be other accreditation, do go through those walkthroughs and those going through that testing process as far as with RLD. And so they do have that third party that's looking at them to ensure that they're keeping up standards. And what it does is, because some of these others actually have fairly high costs on them, it also makes it a little bit more reasonable. And they are already currently New Mexico businesses. And so that's another side for it. Which doesn't mean that we cannot have other labs, as we were talking about, that come in who do one of the other third-party accreditations, whether it be the ISO, IEC, or the NELAC, and going through that, just needing to ensure that they do indeed go through proficiency testing on an annual basis, regardless of who they are.
All right, let's go to Brett.
All right. Thanks, guys. Can you hear me okay, Chris? Okay. Great. Yeah, so I was just gonna say, kind of along what Dominic said, I think leaving more options rather than less in regards to that, where it's kind of an either or. If the department is, if the department feels comfortable that they would have the resources and capability for them to certify it, I think that would even work, that kind of there's three options, or the two different certifications you had talked about, or just independent certification through RLD or Department of Health, whoever that is. But if the state has that, I think, if we're trying to encourage businesses to get into this, I think allowing more options rather than less would the more options we can give people would be better. And I would totally support, I don't want to create things for DOH to have to do or the state to have to do if they're not comfortable with it. But I would say if they're, if they feel good about, they can send people in to say it meets our certifications. That seems like it would cover it in a way that would be more economically feasible for a lot of businesses. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Thank you, Brett.
Oh, and sorry, I thought I was putting my hand down. I realized I just put it back up, so I didn't have anything else to say.
Excellent. Let's go to Greg.
Just making sure my mic works here. Okay. Just adding a question about, would any of these national accreditation processes increase scrutiny on an existing cannabis lab going into testing psilocybin? Like, have we analyzed and asked all those questions? I'm assuming many people have. I just kind of wanted to put that into the sphere of the conversation. And then additionally, to what Brett was just saying, can we use the scientific laboratory division that we have to leverage any sort of, early acceptance as we figure out what the landscape is moving into the first year or two of the program?
So thank you, Greg. Those are good questions. We haven't seen that with regard to the other accreditations, potentially creating other issues for the cannabis testing labs. And not just here, but other places. That's something that's come up many times in many different states as they do that. That doesn't necessarily mean that it can't. We are talking about Schedule I substances. So what the federal government does is outside our purview. But the other aspect of that is SLD actually acts as our reference laboratory, so that they can actually then do other tests that may be needed if there are problems. For example, say that a laboratory has done a test and says and I'll just use an example of what happens in cannabis, and there's mold on the product, or they show no mold, but then later there ends up being mold. Then SLD ends up being that reference laboratory to be able to help with some of those double checks to be able to do that. And so because of that, they have to stay independent, but are there for if there are issues with contaminants. For example, the lab will do things where products will end up with, say, we just had there was a health alert that went out with regard to raw milk and listeria, for example. So that's where the state lab comes into play as the reference laboratory, just as an example. And then in the chat, there is a question about border control. And yes, Eric, that is, so product is not going to be able to go through border patrol. That actually is something that happens currently with cannabis. It will not be any different with regard to psilocybin. We do educate people that they need to make sure that if they are cultivating south of the checkpoints, or also east of the checkpoints, depending where in the state they are, that they are actually ensuring that they are testing at a laboratory there. And so, for example, one of the current labs actually for cannabis actually has testing facilities in both Las Cruces and in Albuquerque for exactly that reason. And that, by the way, is one of the other reasons for why being able to permit or the current existing cannabis testing laboratories could be beneficial because of that geography issue with border patrol and the border checkpoints. I hope that helps.
Yeah. Okay. So you're confident that we can do it with existing. So let me ask you this. How do we, if we need to do secondary samples from labs in that kind of cordoned off zone with border patrol checkpoints, how do we work that?
We have figured out different ways. If it's okay, I'll leave it at that at the moment.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. When there's a will, there's a way. I got you. So we'd probably be kind of operating under that same set of assumptions.
Right. And just so everybody also is aware, I mean, this isn't just suddenly if they're a cannabis lab, we would permit them. They would still have to go through a review process. They would have to request the permit. They still would have to show their capability to be able to test psilocybin. So it wouldn't be something that they would just automatically receive.
What about a requirement to have them do like a round robin testing, maybe twice a year to make sure that we're accurately.
Yeah, that is something that we actually have been talking about as we talk about what actually goes into the testing itself. That as a requirement as part of the proficiency is having it tested by another laboratory. And that's also in part where SLD would come into play.
Okay, so I'm getting ahead of myself. We need to focus
Yeah,
back
no.
on this.
No,
What's that?
no, that's a great question.
Okay. Did somebody else have a comment? Okay. So where's everybody at on accreditation? Do we think the state under what it's currently doing with cannabis is a good enough accreditation for this program? Let me see a show of hands who thinks we should go with the current state program.
And Chris, I would also say that it's that or going through the third party, ensuring they have the third party accreditation.
Yeah, that was kind of my plan after we get an idea here. Okay, so how many hands do we have? Do we have 3?
At present, 3 hands, 4
4.
hands.
So I'm sorry, I saw my thing was still unmuted. I wanted to be clear. So this is all. So Chris, I guess can you lay out what the options are before we actually vote on the 3? Because I'm in support of the more rather than just that. I just wanted to include that. I think there's maybe a little confusion on what exactly we're voting to support.
Thanks for stopping me on that, Brett. So we get everybody up to speed. Okay, so right now we have 2 options. We kind of run this program as Cannabis is running it through the Department of Health's process for cannabis, and we'll kind of follow that model and what they're doing, or we require the NELAC or ISO accreditation, the third party, and we can vote on that separately, what we're going to go with afterwards. And is there a third option that I'm not thinking of at this time?
Chris, I would just say that we're really from the standpoint of the program, we actually are recommending that the labs be one or the other. So not to limit it to either the current existing cannabis testing labs or the other third party, but to allow for both. So a lab could either be apply as they would as an existing cannabis testing laboratory, or they can get the third party certification, such as the NELAC or the ISO, and they could go through either of those pathways to become a psilocybin testing laboratory.
Okay, so that would be the third option, that they can do either.
Correct.
Okay, so do we have let me give a couple of minutes for comments here on this before we start going ahead. So let's go ahead to Eric.
Eric, your mic has been enabled. Okay. We have Gregory Evans next. Go ahead.
I just wanted to take a moment to confirm the user stories in plain language as I'm understanding they're being presented. So 1, I am a New Mexico cannabis lab, and I can use my existing platform to say, hey, I want to test for psilocybin. These are the parameters that I need to meet, and then I get that accreditation and we can move forward. User story 2, I am not a cannabis lab, but I want to start a lab. I go through the set processes of ISO or NELAC accreditation, fill out my application to the Department of Health, and then I am just a psilocybin testing lab. Or I'm an existing cannabis lab, and I want to boost my reliability. I can also get accredited and use that as a way to differentiate myself in the market. Is that correct? Am I missing any possible path?
No, Greg, it's not that the third-party accreditation wouldn't, outside of the current state level, would not be required for the cannabis either way. Cannabis laboratories can go and get that third party, if they wish, regardless. The question is,
Right,
do
as
we
a mark,
go,
as
the question
that
is,
being, yeah.
do we go with just the existing cannabis testing laboratory pathway? Or go with the third-party accreditation pathway, or allow for both. So those are the three different pathways. So
Yeah,
either
I think it's
cannabis
important
testing.
I think it's important to allow for both, but I'll yield and vote.
Did you want to finish your comment, Dominic?
Yeah, I was just saying those are the three choices, I think, as we have them now. Either existing testing, cannabis testing laboratories, third-party accreditation, or both allowed.
All right, I'm trying to think about the best way to do this. Let's go with who thinks that both pathways should be allowed? Raise your hands, please.
We have 11 at present.
11 hands up. Okay. Please put your hands down. So that's already probably a majority, but who thinks there should just be a third party accreditation only?
And no hands raised. Oh, we have one.
We have one hand.
Although Don, you had raised your hand on the previous one. Is this a comment which you wanted to make?
I didn't know that I thought they were separate. I didn't know that they were about the same thing.
Yeah.
So delete my second hand
Okay.
up.
Great. All right. Thank you, Tom.
Okay. And so the other option would just be having it done under the current cannabis pathway. Who thinks it should only be done that way, right? All right. I think we've got a unanimous vote for seeing no hands on that last option. I'm going to say we have a unanimous vote for a process where labs can either use the existing cannabis testing process or become certified through NELAC or ISO. Now, do we want to allow for both of those, or should we restrict it to one or the other? Does anybody have comment on whether we should restrict to NELAC or ISO? Great.
I would like some time to do research on other accreditation pathways to see if there is, cost benefit analysis or pathway and access and equity that can be considered in any of those. But I think if we asterisk the accreditation pathway to be defined in the final draft, I just think our due diligence should allow for a little bit of time here.
I'm not opposed to that. So I think we can hold that off. Will you be ready with it? Your thoughts on that next week?
Oh, are you giving me homework now?
Well, you're the one that wants more time, buddy.
Yeah. I'll communicate with you about that.
Excellent. Thank you.
And Chris, we just have about 10 minutes left, so I would recommend the other topics would probably take more than 10 minutes to cover. So I would recommend we do any final comments.
And I can't see the document. How are we looking on it? I know there's a lengthy definition portion I added to the end that doesn't necessarily, we could probably delete that. I don't know how much of it's actually going to be relevant, but
No, we're actually doing very well. The next step is actually looking at the required testing that will be necessary and needed. And so we'll be able to cover a lot of that in the next week.
okay. One thing I would like people to be aware of that I think might be a conversation next time. I've had a couple conversations with Dan and most recently a lady named hold on a second, let me look at my notes. Rhonda DeSantis from Solutions up in Colorado. And both of them are saying that the use of total potential psilocin or total equivalent total potential psilocin is creating a lot of confusion in their markets, and that maybe total equivalent psilocybin would be a better dosage terminology to use. And I was in the dosage committee meeting the other day, and I got smacked down hard on that, but I still am not convinced, based on the people that I talked to, that that's the right way to go. So, and that's going to be relevant in our next topic, our next conversation. So if we think we should go a different route, we want people to be mindful of that. Hey, okay. And what else do we have? We have our follow-on meeting. Oh, go ahead, Greg. Do you have a quick comment?
Yeah, I think as far as testing is concerned, we can define the HPLC or mass spec definitions without completing how it's communicated on packaging. The measurements are going to be things that, no matter how they're communicated, will have to be tested for. So I think we can breathe on the MTP, PCN, psilocybin equivalency versus psilocin equivalency. I think we can breathe.
Okay. Got it. I also think that another one of the lessons learned I've gotten was that there's not standards throughout the process. And so I would like to potentially visit that and see where everybody's landing on it. But I understand what you're saying. So I think we'll shelve that for now. Our next meeting is scheduled for the 11th. And then we're going to submit our recommendations to the board on the 13th. And then the board meeting is on the 27th. So my guess is we will not meet again until probably the 4th. And I'm assuming at that point, the board will have some ideas of, no, we don't like this, go back, work on it, it's not safe enough, or yes, this looks good, now work on that. So we'll see how that process goes. But I'll probably put in, and we'll be outside a legislative session at that point, right, Dominic?
That is correct. The session ends the 20th or 19th. I have to look. I've been looking at calendars all day. Let me double check on that for everybody. The 19th.
The 19th. Excellent. So yeah. I will probably request and I'm just going to glance at my calendar, a in-person meeting, and we'll do the first one, or a hybrid meeting in Albuquerque for our first one. And then I'll try to move them around. I don't know how many of these we're going to have, but I would like to see some of you face to face for at least one of these, which has been my intention all along. But that would be when I expect our next meeting. Is there any other business or thoughts people want to bring into the table before we close out?
Chris, just a little logistic item I just wanted to bring up to everybody is as we have been working with our IT and as they start to realize how many meetings and documents that we have been doing, they have actually allowed us a little bit of an easier way to put the meeting announcements. And so if you go to our main medical psilocybin program page on the left-hand side, and I've got this up on the screen for those who can see it, but on the left-hand side, there's a psilocybin advisory board link. And if you go there, what it does is it brings you to that page, and you'll notice down below, if you scroll down just a little bit, we are putting in all the committee meeting dates and times and updating this regularly with the links to register. So if for some reason you're questioning or you have a question about when the next set of meetings are, you haven't been keeping track of as far as the emails and all that, you can go to this page and see them. And as we're getting them scheduled, we're putting them up. And then we are still about every week and a half, sending out the updates as far as the meetings themselves. But this way, it makes it a little easier for people to be able to go and do this. And then just Shane, Chris hasn't set a date for that meeting. We'll talk about the meeting for in person at the next meeting, which is going to be next Wednesday, the 11th, February 11th. So great question there. And thank you, Des, for introducing yourself in the chat. And I'm done, other than to thank everybody. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you all.